Hello, Bravo bosses. This is the Bravo Investigator podcast. I am your host, Dana, and today we are talking about The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and the Valley Persian style. Happy Friday, everyone. I hope everyone has had an amazing week. I cannot believe it is already mid-January. That is crazy that we are 2 weeks into 2026. That just feels wild. I just feel like we are still like at the end of 2025. So I don't know where the time has gone. And also, like, we're just buried in snow over here in Toronto. The past couple of days have just been crazy. Schools have been closed, workplaces have been closed. Can't even take a dog for a walk. It is just like buried in snow, crazy, crazy snow. But that is January for you, I guess. We have had such a great week of TV. I am so excited for all of the things that we have programming wise. There is so much. I mean, we had 2 episodes of The Traitors this week: Beverly Hills, the Valley Persian style, Southern Charm, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City reunion part one. We are just jam packed when it comes to TV. But today we are talking about The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, season 15, episode 5. And then we're going to talk about the Valley Persian style, season 1, episode 3. But with Beverly Hills, you guys, I don't know what to say anymore. This show is boring. It has gotten so boring. I don't know what's even going on here. Do we need a cast shakeup? Do we need just a break in time before we film again? I don't know what's happening here, but this used to be such a stellar show. I mean, it's been so many years since the show was good. We don't have real friendships. We don't even have alliances at this point. I don't really feel like we have anything to the point where I could really watch this to fall asleep. And that just makes me sad because this used to be one of my favorite shows. You know, I've stopped covering Vanderpump Rules, the new version, because it was too boring. And I don't want to stop covering this because it's too boring. That just feels very weird. I feel committed to it because I've been watching it since the jump, right? But I, I'm sad. I'm sad for us. I'm sad for the cast. I'm sad for Bravo because I just really feel like this show was so top tier for such a long time, and I just don't know how we got here. That being said, there is always, plot points and major themes for us to talk about, so I will find a way for us to do it. First, we're going to start by talking about the Kyle and Dorit situation, because we have Kyle talking on this episode because they're in Sedona. We're on this cast trip to Sedona. Kyle is talking to Erica in this episode about the Dorit situation because we saw her last week going over to Dorit's house, which would obviously never happen in real life, and how Dorit's like, I ended up sending the kids to Florida. It doesn't matter what PK wants. And, Kyle was sort of combative about it. She's like, I can't really picture him making things difficult. And that's when Dorit was like, listen, he is being difficult. I really need you to be there for me and support me. And actually, I would really appreciate it if you could speak with Mo, because I think that would help things too. But then it turns out that Kyle did talk to Mo, who was like, oh, well, PK's a great dad. And I've seen the text with Dorit, and Dorit has been blocking him from seeing the kids. So because of that, I feel like, and Erica concurs, that Kyle should just stay out of it as much as possible. Because here's the thing, Dorit and Kyle are not in a good place. And so we know that Dorit wants Kyle to be a girl's girl. We know that Dorit wants her to be supportive. We even have this scene of Dorit talking to Bose and Rachel about it, and how she doesn't feel like Kyle's on her side, and how she doesn't feel like Kyle's actions are aligning with her words. But if Kyle doesn't feel like she can support Dorit in that way, which I don't feel like she feels like she can, because then she's sort of going against Mo, and she's also getting just too involved in something that really isn't her business. If she gets too involved in that, it is going to create a situation between her and Mo. It'll create a situation between her and PK. And it'll also probably end up creating more of a situation between her and Dorit, because unless she's on Dorit's side about absolutely every aspect of this, then I think it's just going to cause more fire. So it's an interesting situation, because what is best for all is actually for Kyle to stay out of it. But that's actually going to end up pissing Dorit off more, because Dorit wants Kyle to be a part of it. So I feel like this is sort of a weird lose-lose situation for everyone involved, because of the weird place that Kyle and Dorit are in. If Kyle and Dorit were best friends right now, this would be a lot more simple. You would have Kyle being there for her 100%. You would have her saying, PK is a jerk. I've got your back. I've got all of this. But because they're not best friends right now, she doesn't feel compelled to do that for Dorit. And she doesn't feel compelled to go that far against PK when he hasn't really done anything to her, she feels like. So I totally agree with Erica and anyone else that concurs with this. Kyle should just stay the fuck out of it. It is what's best for everyone. But I think that is going to not bode well for any future relationship between Dorit and Kyle, because it is the actions that Dorit is waiting for from Kyle in order for them to repair their friendship. But Kyle is not going to take those actions. So yeah, we're just in this weird place where I don't think they'll ever be able to come out of it, even though you would think that this would be maybe that one thing on earth that could bring them together, because Dorit needs a support system right now. Kyle's also sort of going through the same thing. And if anything could bring them back together, it could be like they're mutual commiserating about something horrible that's going on between them. But instead, they're just never going to be able to come back together because Kyle just can't give Dorit what she wants without sort of, I guess, lying to herself, right? Because she doesn't believe that PK is a bad dad, and she doesn't believe that Dorit has done no wrong in this situation. So yeah, I think we are pretty much, as of this season, done with Kyle and Dorit. I really do feel like we are. Okay, then we have the situation with Avi. So remember that Avi is Sutton's ex-assistant. They had this really like funny friendship, but she let him go, I guess sometime last year. And she said on the show that, she didn't really need an assistant anymore and that there's no bad blood and it's all good. But we weren't really sure what happened there. Then we hear from Amanda that this friend of hers met Avi, who said that he would spill the tea and give all the real dirt on Sutton if Amanda wanted it. So she tells Kyle this because she's like, I don't really know what to do with this information. Then Kyle tells her, I think you should talk to Amanda about it. So she talks to Amanda about it, and Sutton says, like, it doesn't affect me. Now, I'm sure it does deep down, but Amanda trying to turn this into something was kind of a flop, right? Like, I guess Amanda thought that she was doing what you're supposed to do on reality TV, which is like bring up a rumor. But it sort of reminded me of a situation that happened on Selling the OC, even though I wasn't really paying attention. There's like this new pregnant girl this year on Selling the OC, and she went up to Alex Hall and was like, oh, Tyler was dating this other girl while you were dating him, and I just wanted to be a girl's girl and tell you. And Alex Hall was like, yeah, I knew about that, and you're not being a girl's girl. You're literally just being a gossip, and what you're doing is absolutely not cool at all. So it's possible that the cast with Amanda could be taking what she's doing here either way, right? Either she thinks she's doing what she's supposed to do for reality TV, or she's doing it to be genuine, but I really doubt that she's trying to be genuine. Now, Sutton says that she and Avi had a friendly relationship, but it was professional. Then we get this confessional of Jennifer Tilly, saying that she talked to Avi, who also thought that things with Sutton were like temporary. So I guess that means he thought that it was like a pause or something. And he thought that he was going to go back to working for her and that he didn't even really know what happened. Jennifer says they had a really funny relationship until they didn't. So it is interesting in terms of what happened here. And it's also interesting that Jennifer spoke with him. I wonder if Sutton is even aware of that. Now, we've seen a little bit of contention between Jennifer and Sutton over the past couple weeks, just like these tiny little things in their friendship where it almost seems like Sutton is annoyed with Jennifer for little things that she says, or she's almost taking things that Jennifer has said as, I don't know, kind of what's the word, like chirping her. It's almost like she feels like Jennifer is chirping her or making these little like snide comments against her when she doesn't feel like she's doing that. And then we actually see Jennifer walking away at the end of the episode because she feels like Sutton just like snaps on her for no reason. And Kyle goes out to see if she's okay. And she actually tells Kyle, I think this is why Garcelle left, because it's always about Sutton. And I'm just like, whoa, I can't believe Jennifer just said that. Like, that was kind of wild, right? We thought that Jennifer was Sutton's ride or die, but I think it's pretty clear that even Jennifer is getting sick of Sutton and the way that Sutton treats people. So this is really interesting. Now, that being said, Sutton also tells us during this episode, and Dorit, because that's who she's talking to, that she had to sit down with her mom as a patient. So basically, remember that her mom is a therapist. So her mom was a therapist, she acted as the patient, and she learned from her mom that she was pushing her anger from her failed relationships onto other people. And that if someone said something negative about her or felt something negative about her, it would consume her completely. So she's learned not to do that either. And Dorit was really impressed by this. She's like, the walls are really coming down with Sutton. And so it really feels like for the first time, this is a real relationship. And for that, I think that's great, right? I feel like Sutton and Dorit have so much in common. And so it's always been so crazy that they got to such contentious places over time because look at the stage of life that they're both in now. Sutton could really be helping Dorit through this divorce process because, hey, she's been through it before. So I'm really happy for Sutton that she's had a lot more insight into her issues with these women and her relationship with them. But one thing I just kind of don't like, and maybe I'm making too much of it as somebody who used to like regulate people, is that her mother, a therapist, treated her as a patient because that's a no-no. You cannot do that. You cannot treat your immediate family members because of the bias, right? Like Sutton's mom is not going to be able to treat Sutton in the same way that she would a stranger. It's just it's not appropriate for so many different reasons, but mostly biases being involved. But it's just very interesting that Sutton is so focused on figuring out her relationships with the women this season, and as she should, right? Because despite her tagline being about wanting to be the main character this season, she sort of is one. I mean, they all are, right? They all are. But because she's not a newbie, she's sort of, a main character in that sense. And because she doesn't have any friends this season, right? Like she's lost Garcelle, she's lost Avi. It seems like Jennifer isn't very happy with her. I think she's trying to figure out how am I going to fit into this group better? And we heard her talk a couple of weeks ago about how she struggled with that over the years in terms of thinking that she wasn't pretty enough or wasn't cool enough to be a part of this group. And that just made me so incredibly sad because you are, Sutton, you are. And it's not healthy for anyone to be around people where they don't feel appreciated or loved or valued, right? That can't be good for anyone. So I think it's really good for her to try to find her place in this group. But what I worry about is that she's kind of forgetting about Jennifer Tilly in the process because Sutton, this woman has been by your side. She's been your ride or die. And she's feeling like slighted by you. She feels like you're constantly snapping at her. And if you don't rectify that, you could end up losing her. So while you're so worried about rectifying all of these other relationships with all of these other women who, quite frankly, you've never really been friends with, don't forget about the one that's been by your side from the beginning. Now, Sutton does feel like Amanda is using her with the whole Avi thing to get attention, which is very possible. But then Sutton kind of loses it and forbids people to even include her in a conversation about Avi. She says it's painful. He was in her life a long time. And what do they want from her? And, I agree, right? They keep talking about it, but what else is there, right? Because Amanda's bringing it up. Erica's why else would she bring it up but to be gossipy? If there's nothing additional that Sutton can really contribute to this, unless she's actually willing to tell us what really happened, then there really is no point in continuing to talk about it. But I don't love to talk about people that aren't on screen. Sutton doesn't even really believe that Avi even made that comment that I'd be willing to spill all the real dirt on Sutton. So I think she's implying that Amanda made it up. I don't think Amanda made it up. I think that Avi would say something like that, considering I don't even know him, but I still feel like he would. But yeah, I think we don't need to be talking about Avi or anybody else who isn't on screen unless we're talking about Garcelle, because I do think it was really interesting for Jennifer to make that comment. This is why Garcelle left, because it's always about Sutton. I mean, those are huge words. Those are fighting words. And I think that there's going to be major beef between Jennifer and Sutton this season, even possibly postseason once Sutton sees the things that Jennifer has said about her in confessionals. And is this true in terms of why Garcelle left? I mean, it seems so, right? It seems to be what Garcelle was saying. She didn't feel like Sutton had her back. She felt like Sutton was her real friend, and yet Sutton seemed to be picking all of the other women and the show over her. So while I think it's great that Sutton has had all of this introspection, I think there's still a lot more work to do. All right, that is all for the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Let's move on to The Valley Persian Style, Season 1, Episode 3. So I felt like this was actually more of a filler episode, even though we're only 3 episodes in. But that's because I think the first 2 episodes were so fulsome and were giving us so much information, so many new characters that I feel like they kind of had to give us a solid and let us relax for a minute and just sort of watch how things are playing out. So we start with Sky, and she's talking about how she designs one of a kind fine jewelry, and she wants to have a trunk show at her house to showcase the jewelry. Perfect. You're a designer, you're a business owner, you want to put that on camera. That is what these shows are for. So we absolutely love that. Now she tells Bamshad that Gigi has an OnlyFans. Bamshad Googles it to see what it even is. And I thought that this was so funny that there's even people who don't know what it is. Now, Bamshad is 19 years older than Sky, but it was sort of giving. Actually, I did watch Vanderpump Rules this week, so it was sort of giving Lisa Vanderpump telling Guillermo and Natalie that the eyebrow twins have an OnlyFans, and he's like, "What is this sex work? What is this thing?" So Sky tells the camera that she thinks that Gigi having an OnlyFans is trashy. And Sky definitely gives me, if I have to relate her to another Valley character, she really reminds me of Michelle Lally. She kind of comes off as very poised, very stoic, very proper. And I think that that is something that we're going to see play out a lot between her and Gigi, how they're just such different people. Last week, she also had made a comment about something Gigi had said and implied that it just was sort of declasse. And this was something that I had mentioned last week as well that I enjoyed about this show, where yes, they are the same age as the Valley people. And yes, they live in the Valley and it's similar in that way. The way that it's different is the wealth that these people either have or pretend that they have or talk about. So this concept of like opulence and what's like proper, almost as if they live in the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, right? Because there's a lot of talk about like, you know, the appropriate way to do things. Then we get this scene of Tommy and MJ, and he's telling her about his lunch with her mother, Vita, last week, which we saw, and that did not go well. He said that Vita said that MJ is unhappy in her marriage, but he thinks all of MJ's faults are from Vita. Okay, okay, that's something. Why are you saying that to her face? That is extremely rude. Not only are you telling her that she has a bunch of faults, you're telling her that they all come from her mom, which is like double offensive. Then he says he feels like he's the only one who has to fix things and he feels like he's being singled out. Okay, fair enough. There are 2 people in a relationship for sure. But Vita pulled him aside to tell him, like, look, your wife is unhappy, right? And if your wife is unhappy, there is some of you that has to do something about that. But the thing is about Tommy, and I only discovered this man last week, right? 2 episodes ago. I just started watching Shaw's from the beginning, so I don't know him yet. And people are saying that this is just who he is. I don't think a person should have to change who they are. Absolutely. And I don't think that he is even capable of it. It is very clear that the rude, obnoxious, loudmouth way that he is just who he is. But then I think that MJ has to get out of this marriage because this isn't healthy for anyone. He's just constantly putting her down. And this is something that her mom also used to do, right? So to just have all of these people in her life constantly like bashing her, it's not healthy for her self-esteem. And I agree, he shouldn't have to change who he is, but then I don't think that this is the right relationship for her. Now, they end up continuing to kind of talk about how they communicate. And MJ's like, you are constantly shoving things under the rug that I want to talk about. And he's like, well, you take no accountability, so I don't want to talk about things. Now, we know that they are currently divorced and that this didn't work out. And I actually think that that's for the best. But I am proud of MJ for really being open about the issues that she's having in her relationship and saying to herself, I'm not just going to sit back and accept these things. I'm just not. She said that in the very first episode. Like, he's becoming like Al Bundy, and I'm not going to become Peggy Bundy. I'm just not. She has enough self-respect for herself. She knows what she wants from her life, and she's not happy in her marriage. But at this point right now, we're sort of in this weird place where we're not clear how serious that is yet. While he is talking to her in an awful way, we're just not clear about how far she's willing to take that because it hasn't come up yet. Again, we know in real life they're divorced, but at this point in time, it doesn't seem like she's fully there yet. So then we have this scene at Sky's house. Tannen and Reza come over and they end up talking about how Greg, and remember that's Tannen's husband, he doesn't like when Tannen goes out with her friends. So he mentioned this last week. He's like, I don't like the idea of you and your friends going out and guys like looking at you and stuff. But the other issue is that he's not going out with her either. Tannen's like, he doesn't make any effort to spend time with me. Now, Reza, interestingly, he's like, I do not understand why Greg does not want to spend all of his time with Tannen. I would want to spend all of my time with my partner. Now, Reza, I think you're a little bit of a different breed, right? Because the way he is with Adam, he wants Adam touching him 24 hours a day. He wants it all up on him. And that's what he wants in his relationship, right? Not everybody wants to spend every waking moment with their partner. I think there's like a healthy balance that Tannen and Greg want to try to get to. I don't even think that Tannen wants Greg to come out with her every single night and spend every waking moment with her. I just think she thinks that he needs to be able to put more effort into this relationship, right? Now, Sky thinks that it's very disrespectful that he doesn't spend time with her. And I agree, right? And that's the thing about Sky, right? She'll speak about it in a more, what's the word? She can come at it from from a broader place or from a more generic place. Like she's like, overall, like you look at this from like an overall perspective, this is disrespectful. Now, Tannen says she doesn't think Greg thinks there's a problem. And, being a supporter isn't really his strength. And maybe it's not, but I think that this show is really going to kind of open both of their eyes to the fact that there is a problem, because you can't really ignore it when you're talking about it on camera and then podcasters are talking about it and people on the internet are talking about it. And then you're on Watch What Happens Live and then you're on a reunion. People are going to be talking about your relationship a lot. So I think it's going to be good for their relationship to sort of open this up and make Greg realize there's a problem. I do think that Greg absolutely loves his wife, but I think the fact that they are now in separate bedrooms is just, the starting point for things. I don't know. It's a bad starting point, right? I mean, once you are in separate bedrooms, it just starts to create more and more of a divide between you. Then we get a little bit more about Reza and Adam's relationship. So Reza and Adam do these daily check-ins for their relationship, which I think is so incredibly healthy. Everybody needs to do this. They were holding hands while they do it, and they're like, okay, what do you need? And what do you need? So Reza says that he needs more physical touch, but he wants it to be out of the blue, no reason, just touch me, touch me, touch me. Now, Adam explains that in his household growing up, affection was not a thing. So it's more of an effort for him, basically, right? He has to be more cognizant of it because it's not something that he's used to. But I really appreciate that they do this together, where they take each other's hands and they say, what do you need? And what do you need? And how can I give that to you? That just sounds like such an incredibly healthy thing to do, and kind of explains why they've been together for 10 years and still really want to be all over each other. So then we get the scene of Reza Jackson and Gigi and Natasha going to get pedicures. Now they are talking about Gigi's ex, Dennis. So they met 14 years ago. They dated briefly, but then they were like best friends, hung out all the time, and like, family basically. But then in November 2024, Gigi and Dennis got married in Vegas. But then they got it annulled 10 days later. And she's like, I'm not a relationship person. It wasn't what was meant to be. I didn't really want to marry him. But what really happened is right after they got annulled, he got with her friend, like right after the fact. And she was pissed. So she tells Natasha and Reza about this, that she like fucking hates him, wants to pull his head off. But then she also mentions that she dated this guy, Ty, and she tried to get back at Ty by marrying Dennis. So Reza's like, oh, so aren't you also the one who like got a little bit dirty here? She's like, no. It's like a whole different thing. Okay, we'll get back to that later because it is a bit confusing. And she gives us a little bit more information later. But she thinks that Dennis owes her a big apology for hooking up with her friend right after they got divorced. I feel like this was kind of put in as a storyline because we don't know Dennis. Maybe we do from Shaw's from before. I really don't know. But in terms of their relationship, Dennis isn't on this show. They broke up before this show happened. They got divorced before it happened. And he started hooking up with her friend before the show happened. So for her to be this upset about a guy that she didn't really have feelings for, she didn't really want to marry and only did it as sort of like we were bored kind of thing, I just don't really get why she's so upset. And that's why I think she isn't actually upset. I think she's pretending to be upset for a storyline because it can't all just be like weed and like trying to rent an apartment. Like, I don't know. But like, it really just felt like, okay, we're bringing up something that really doesn't matter, really doesn't affect anybody's lives anymore to create a scene, to create a storyline. So that was a little bit like lackluster, I guess, in my opinion. At the end of the episode, we have Gigi meeting up with Dennis, and she's, livid with him. She's telling him she would never go after one of his friends. She's like, "Where's my apology? You're such an asshole." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't understand why you're so angry, man." And the producer asks Gigi how she thinks what she did with the Thai guy plays a part. And she's like, no, it doesn't play a part because Dennis didn't know that I only married him to get back at my ex Thai when he dated my friend a week after they got married. All right. I see what she's saying. But again, she was never into Dennis. She only married him to make someone else jealous. So if you never had feelings for him, then why are you mad that he dated your friend? Like, I just don't think that you truly are mad. I truly think you are doing this literally just for a storyline. And even Dennis is like, "You're acting like I cheated on you. This was after we got divorced." And she's like, "Yeah, you were like rushing that annulment, like you wanted to line up your third wife or something." So what if he did? So what if he did? I would 100% understand her anger if she was in love with this guy, but she's never been in love with this guy. So it feels fake to me. So now we're at Sky's trunk show and everybody shows up. Everybody's outside. It's a nice, beautiful day. And then Gigi just starts smoking a blunt out of nowhere at the event, right? I mean, they're outside, but you're at Sky's house, right? So it is incredibly rude. Like, you don't smoke at somebody's house. Like, I know she needs it to relax, but couldn't she have done that before she got there? So Sky is like understandably pissed. She tells Bamshad, like, if you see the kids around, make sure that they don't see this. I don't want them to see this. And so Sky is sort of becoming like the unofficial etiquette police, and like Gigi is just never passing. But then we have Gigi talking to MJ about Tommy and how she feels about being in these group settings, given that Tommy is not really making an effort with the friend group. And MJ says, "Well, yeah, I'd like to have my partner here. It is sad." And Gigi tells the camera that MJ is very insecure and might be worried about being alone. So that's why she's not analyzing her situation in her marriage. And that could be very well true, right? I mean, we've talked about how, demoralizing Tommy is to her, in addition to the way her mother is to her. So it's very possible that she's afraid to leave him, or isn't sure what to do because they have a child, or is worried that she may not be able to find somebody else again. I mean, these are all normal thoughts that every woman has when she's considering a divorce, right? And so it's a stressful thing, but I feel bad for her that she has to navigate all of these group situations. It hasn't gotten that bad yet, but she shouldn't have to navigate them themselves because Tommy is on the show. I understand that he doesn't want to film with Reza and Gigi and Adam or whoever, but you have agreed to film the show. So to keep making your wife go to these events by herself and, have to speak for you, it just doesn't really seem fair. I feel like if you were her real partner, you would sit down with her and be like, "Okay, how can we figure this out? Maybe I could have a conversation with Reza. Maybe I could sit down with Gigi. Maybe we could really figure this out once and for all." But no, Tommy is just about Tommy and doing what's best for Tommy. So Tannen talks to Greg and Bamshad and Reza about her marriage and the sleeping arrangement situation. And, Tannen is saying that Bamshad and Sky, according to like something that she read, I guess, about like the solidness of relationships, she says that Bamshad and Sky have the most solid relationship according to like some tests that she saw. And Bamshad said, "Well, no, not necessarily. Like, Sky has a strong personality, so we're not perfect. And we butt heads. Plus, we don't sleep in the same room, and I miss sleeping in the same bed with her." And Tannen says that she and Greg have been sleeping separate for a while, and she sleeps so much better. And like, we know, Tannen, we know, but it's such a bad thing for your relationship, because if you're not having like those intimate conversations before bed, you really are missing out on pieces of your relationship where you could be getting closer. So Bamshad and Sky start getting into a fight right in front of everyone, actually, because she mentions how she asked him to get a bartender for the event. And he was like, "Yeah, I'll take care of it." But then the bartender didn't show up. So I don't really get what happened here. I don't know if maybe Bamshad first said that he would do it, and then she was like, "No, get a real person." And then he didn't do it in time. or the person literally just didn't show up. I really don't understand the circumstance here exactly. But Sky's like, yeah, like a lot of other things didn't show up or doesn't go right or whatever. And he's like, and then you have Bamshed being like, here we go. And Sky just goes inside because she thinks this is so rude to be talking about somebody's marriage. And we see them talking about it a bit later, where she expresses that, everyone talking about their marriage is something that really bothers her. And she didn't like the way that he was being a part of it. And he's like, no, that's not what I was doing. I was actually shutting it down. It was everybody else that was talking about our marriage. But he says, Sky, you were already tense. And she's like, yeah, because you failed to take care of the bartender situation. And he's like, I had a crazy busy day. Lots was going on. And she's like, so was I. But like, I'm not overreacting because things like this happen all the time. You're acting like this was a one-off, but these kinds of things happen all the time. I asked you to get a bartender and you failed. And he's like, I don't like you constantly calling me a failure. It's not a good look to keep acting like your husband is a failure. And that's sort of how it ends with them. But I think that there's a lot of work that can be done on this relationship, right? It's clear that Sky is sort of holding on to all of these little things that Bamshed does. And while they may be small things, I think it's the fact that they are building up and building up and building up that's pissing her off. And that he doesn't like the way that she speaks about him or treats these little things as maybe bigger than they are. And so I feel like they have to sort of do some work on their communication, which is, what a lot of these couples have to do, obviously, right? I mean, like a lot of these problems can be not necessarily resolved, but worked on with better communication. And I really do feel like, as crazy as this is, that this show is going to be so good for all of these couples because they're going to be able to get insight into their relationship that they didn't necessarily have before. I love how open and giving these people have been, but it's interesting how they still don't necessarily see their relationship the way the rest of the world necessarily sees it. Like, for example, where Tannen's saying, I don't even think Greg knows that there's a problem. Greg is going to know there's a problem once he sees it on TV. So despite the fact that there are all these like issues in all of these relationships, I feel very hopeful that the show is going to kind of highlight them, but then also kind of push these couples to work on their issues together. That being said, still obsessed with this show. Absolutely love it. I think it's so fascinating, so real, so interesting, and I cannot get enough. So that is the end for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and YouTube at The Bravo Investigator. Join the Patreon at patreon.com/The Bravo Investigator Podcast. And I love you, BBs. I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bravo Investigator Podcast. For more content, head over to patreon.com/The Bravo Investigator Podcast. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at The Bravo Investigator. If you enjoyed the show, leave a 5-star review. Love you, BBs. See you next time.